world we live in appears in space, unfolds in time, and makes itself available through knowledge. The time-space knowledge vision evokes direct insight into the broader dimensions of these most fundamental aspects of existence. It was introduced by Tibetan Lama Tarthang Tulku, who explored it in a series of books written over 20 years, starting in 1977. Not Buddhist, nor bound to any system of belief, it reveals a new way of looking at our world, fresh, immediate and alive. This video offers an introduction to the TSK Vision, a synthesis of the best ways of knowing of East and West, science, philosophy and direct experience. Here is Jack Petranka, a close student of Tarthang Tulku, who worked with him on crafting the TSK Vision over the course of 15 years. Jack is the founder of the Centre for Creative Inquiry and has been teaching TSK since 1983.
I'd like you to see for yourself what this new way of seeing, thinking, and living in the world can do, how it can affect your life in so many different ways. TSK doesn't belong to any particular tradition. It's just a way of asking some fundamental questions. Questions that engage your senses, your feelings, and your experience. My own sense is that they're the right questions for our world today. We've had enough of beliefs and systems that just lead to conflict and controversy. We need to get back to basics. We need to question the way things are. You're about to see some scenes from a workshop I did in England in the spring of 2012. The people who took part were mostly new to TSK. They just had an interest in trying out something that might be truly profound and also good fun. The heart of TSK is your experience, your exploration. It all begins when you ask questions you've never thought to ask before, when you turn experience on edge to open new dimensions and new possibilities. It's like discovering skills you didn't know you had. Time, space, and knowledge, and generally just for convenience, we do say TSK. We're really good at using the mind in a certain way. We're very quick. So, the weakness and the strength of that way of using the mind is something that I think TSK speaks to. Look at an object, or you don't have to stay with one, and ask yourself about the distance that separates you from the object. And the way we might structure that conceptually at the beginning would be to say, well, there's the object which occupies a certain space, and then I'm over here and I occupy a certain space, and then there's the distance between the two, and that has to do with space also. But that's just the starting point. That might be how we start off initially in describing what's going on, but it may well be that you find connections. It may well be that that's a much more distanced way of looking. So I don't want to prejudge the issue. I'm just saying, don't you prejudge it either. Just allow for the possibility that distance may not be exactly what you think it is to start. So let's do that for a couple of minutes.
Just looking at the negative space created by the silhouette behind those flowers with the light behind, and then your shape beside it, and thinking of negative space, the space that surrounds an object.
Okay.
And also then with my breathing, I felt as if the air was breathing, the curtain was breathing, everything was breathing, the plant was breathing.
It raises questions about the nature of space. It's not how you would normally describe space, to say that the flowers were breathing along with you. That suggests something about distance and the lack of distance, or intimacy and distance perhaps, that is well worth expanding out into other dimensions of your experience. Well, distance is a term that is a spatial term. It clearly starts off with our experience of space, right? We say, I'm at a certain distance from this or a certain distance from that. But in fact, the term distance is one that we apply in a wide variety of areas. And the most natural place to look is, again, kind of the psychological arena, where you might say to someone, well, you feel very distant today, right? So the question would be, what does it mean? What does that sense of distance consist of? And we might say the word distance in that case is just a metaphor, but it is a metaphor drawn from our understanding of what space is and what's possible in space. Fair to say that intimacy is the opposite of distance? Not in terms of objects, but in terms of things we care about or people we care about, it certainly seems appropriate. Does that mean we're just misapplying our understanding of space? Or does it mean that there's more to space than we're... How do we engage the world around us? If we automatically assume at the beginning that there are distances and boundaries and edges and borders, we're going to experience the world in a certain way. If we could challenge any one of those, and by challenge I don't mean conceptually challenge, but if we could really experience the world differently, what would that do? Let me give you another example that takes us out of the strictly spatial level. If you think about where you live, think about your bed, let's make it very specific. If you think about your bed, all of you presumably, and if not, you might be interested in hearing, all of you thinking about your bed, and we say think, but you probably had an image of your bed, possibly a feeling of what it's like to be in bed, or, okay? What happened to distance while you were doing that? You were actually, in some sense, connected with that space. Is that just a totally silly way to think about space, or does that tell us just as much about space as our usual physical senses? Okay. So you could say, well, what does that have to do with an exploration of space? But what I'm saying is that that is an exploration of space. There is a different kind of space that operates when you think about your bed. And it doesn't matter whether it's 2 miles away or 20 miles away. If I think about my bed, it's 7,000 miles away or whatever, None of that matters.
And just came away thinking, well, there is no distance, actually, because that's full of space, I'm full of space, this is space between us, it's just arisen in space.
Right.
And when I shut my eyes, as I was doing in my experiment, it disappeared. And when I opened my eyes again, if I opened one eye, it moved one way, and if I opened the other eye, it moved the other way. There is no real distance.
It's suggested for you as a possibility you might want to look at. In another sense, you could say we're always in the past, because if you stop and look at your experience, what you do is you reach back and look at it, right? And even so that you're looking at the past. And even if you anticipate a future moment, the stand that you take toward that future moment is then that will have happened. If we live in that kind of world, we think we're having a kind of active living experience, but in fact, we're always turning it in to something that we can then, in a sense, consume. Something, say, well, this is the way, to say this is the way it is actually to say, this is the way that I've chosen to describe it to myself, or name it.
Once again, I've enjoyed the opportunity to have some time set aside and some expert guidance to help me look at some aspects of my experience that I can take away for what is part of my work.
We hope you've enjoyed watching this introduction to the Time-Space Knowledge Vision, and that it starts you thinking. If you'd like to know more, TSK workshops are held in several countries around the world, and the TSK intensives are held in Europe, the UK and the United States. Here follows the information you need to learn about programs, signing up for our mailing list, downloading some short essays, or to buy some TSK books. Until then, we wish you a free and open inquiry and an ever-expanding vision.